So today's Daf Mem Daled Amud Aleph. We're reviewing slightly the case that we started yesterday of where a person, or more accurately a woman, she comes in front of the Beit Din and she has two Ketubot that she wants to collect. One Ketubah has 200, the regular of Ketubah, and the other Ketubah has 300. So we said we were going into how it, how is it possible? What's happening over here? So we were saying that if she wants, she can collect either one or the other. What's the difference between collecting the first or the second? The main difference is because now it's called something that when she collects from the first date, it means that there are certain properties that were mortgaged to her loan. However, if she's going to collect at a later date, then she's going to lose those properties, and maybe other people are going to have precedence over her collecting from the second. Okay, so the Gemara says 3 lines from the top. Amar ma, ibaya behai gavia, ibai behai gavia. If she wants, she can collect from either the first ketubah or she can collect from the second ketubah. Lema pliga de Rav Nachman. Let's say that this ruling argues with Rav Nachman. The Amar Rav Nachman, shne shtarot hayotziin beze achar ze. If you have 2 documents that come out one after the other, okay, bitel sheni et harishon. The second document cancels the first one. So we see how this argues on what we just said with where if there's 2 ketubot, she can collect either the first or second, whichever one she wants. But over here we see that if there's 2 documents, then the second one is the valid one and the first one is invalid. So we see that it's a contradiction. Says the Gemara, Lav mi itmar ala. Wasn't it already said on this? Amar Rav Papa, that Rav Papa said, Umode Rav Nachman, that even Rav Nachman agrees, Di'i hosif be dikla letosefet kadve. Meaning, if he adds on, okay, letosefet ktiva, if he wants, he can add on an extra, even a decade, a palm tree. Meaning, the first ketubah was 200. Now, if he wants, he can write a second shtar for, he says, 200 plus a palm tree. So when it comes to ketubah, it's a bit different than a regular loan, a regular shtar. There, by the regular shtar, he says, yes, the second shtar cancels the first shtar. But over here, by ketubah, he agrees, Rav Nachman agrees, that if he writes a second shtar, he's able to write a second shtar as a tosefet, and it would not be a problem. Hachanami, ha'osif lamide. We see over here also in our case that the first shtar was 200, the second shtar was 300, so obviously he added on something. Gufa. Going back to the ruling that we just said, Amar Rav Nachman, shte shtarot hayotzein beze achar ze, bitel sheni et harishon. If there are 2 documents that come one after the other, the second one is the one that takes precedence over the first one, meaning the second cancels the first. Amar Rav Papa, umode Rav Nachman, di'i osif badikla letosefet kadve. Shita, says the Gemara, this is obvious. Obviously he's able to do a tosefet ketubah. What's Rav Nachman's, or what's Rav Papa coming to tell us? That Rav Nachman agrees that by ketubah he can add on tosefet. He can add on another shtar for tosefet. It's obvious. Rishon b'mecher v'sheni b'matana liapot kochohu. So he says, in a case where there are 2 documents, okay, the first document is mecher, a sale. The second document is a matana for the same type of thing. Okay, it's coming to embellish, it's coming to add on to what he was doing. Meaning, mishum dina de bar matzah. There's a halacha, or a concept more accurately, called bar matzah, where if a person has a field and he wants to sell his field, okay, he's not obligated 100%, but there is a certain obligation where he should be selling the field to his neighbor more than to anyone first. Meaning, a person has a house. He wants to sell his house. Okay? Yeah. It's not halakha. It's not halakha that you're obligated. It's halakha in terms of that you should, this is the proper thing to do. The first person that should have the right to buy the house is the neighbor. Okay? So what happens? He sells this field. Now, the neighbor is going to come and say, hey, why didn't you sell me the field? I wanted to buy the field. Well, so what does he do? He does a shtar mecher. He does first a sale. And then he tells him, you know what? Please, don't cause problems over here. I'm going to write you a shtar matana. I'm going to write it for you that this field, I gave it to you as a matana. Okay? So what does that do? Now the guy, he's going to come and say, hey, why didn't you sell the field to me? The neighbor is going to come, why didn't you sell the field to me? He's going to tell him, hey, it's a matana. I'm able to choose who I want to give a present to. If I want to give it to him a present, then I don't want to give it to you. What, I have to give it to you first as a present? No, I give it to him. So even though the second shtar is a matana, right? It's still going to be the first shtar of mecher is going to be valid. Okay? What did Rav Nachman say in the beginning? That when we have two shtarot, one after the other, the same thing more or less, what happens? The second shtar cancels the first shtar, right? But over here, we see a case where even though the first shtar, the shtar of mecher, the shtar of sale, there was technically nothing wrong. But and he wrote a second shtar on the same thing of matana, we still would listen, we would still pay attention to the first shtar. Okay, we're going to soon see the nafkamina of this. Okay, so this is one instance. V'kol sheken rishon b'matana, v'sheni b'mecher. And for sure, if the first shtar was matana and the second one was a sale, that the reason why he did it was because of bar chov. Okay, that if the bar chov, how do you call it? Yeah, it's someone who he owes money to. He's gonna come and he's gonna want to collect the field after. So he tells him, listen, you bought the field after it was already mortgaged to me, right? So in this case, the second case, we had a first case where what? He wrote first the shtar mecher, then the matana. Over here, he wrote the matana and then afterwards the mecher. What does that do? That means that the second guy, technically, he's being a tzaddik. He's losing out for the sake of the first guy. Okay, so this way, if someone's going to come and is going to say, hey, this guy owes me money and you bought the field after he owed me money, the second guy is going to have to now give up his field for the first guy. Meaning at the end of the day, he got it as a present. But now he's doing it to help out the first guy. However, if both of the shtarot were mecher, were sale, shnehem b'matana, or both of them were matana, bitel sheni et harishon. The second one then cancels the first one. My tama, what's the reason for this? Rafram amar, emar oduye odele. He agrees to him. Okay, meaning he agrees that the first shtar was what? Was mizuyaf. But however, he said, okay, you have this shtar, you know what? I'll be nice to you. I'll give it to you anyways. I'll make a real second shtar for you. Okay, so that's why they would have two of the same shtarot. One example. Rav Acha Amar, Imar Ochuli Achle, the Shibudei, that what? That he was mochel for his shibud. He gave up his thing. My benayu, what would be the difference between the two answers? Ika benayu, oroe sahade. If you say that the first case was what? 2 shtarot of mecher, and the first one was mizuyaf, the case of Rafa, so then what happens? The edim that are signed on the first shtar, if they agree that it's a shtar mizuyaf, so we have a problem now with the edim. Why? How can these edim, they sign on a false document? Okay, so that's one. Ve'lashlume pere, or that he has to pay up the fruits, meaning if now he had the how do you call it? In between the two sales, right? We were talking about mortgaging in between the two sales. So if it was from the first sale, so then the third guy that's coming into the picture, he can't do anything about this. Why? Because the field was sold before his loan to the second guy. But if you're going to say it goes by the second date, that means what? He was mochel for his shibud. Now, not only is he going to have to give the field, but he's also going to have to give the perot, all the fruits that were in the meantime, he's going to have to pay it up. Okay? Ultaksa. And also for taska, sorry. Also in terms of who's going to have to pay the tax. Yeah, I guess you can say that. IRS, whatever it's going to be.
The transition is property tax.
Yeah. So that's the third nafka between the two answers. Who's going to have to pay this property tax? If you say that the first shtar was mizuyaf, so then it's going to be the owner, the original owner. Yeah. If you're just saying that he was mocher for his shibud, then it's going to have to be the second time. Okay? So at the end of the day, says the Gemara, "My havi ala diktuba." What's going to be the halacha for the ketubah in the end? Tashema, come in here. The Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer beRabbi Shimon, Mane Matayim min ha'erusin, v'tosefet min ha'nisuin. Depends, meaning the first Mane and Matayim, either 100 or 200. This you're able to collect already mishat ha'erusin. But any tosefet is only going to be afterwards mishat hanisuin, meaning the advantage over here is that the manem matayim goes from the erusin. Chachamim omrim no, echad ze ve'echad ze min hanisuin. Both of them are only from the nisuin, and this is what the halacha is today. That obviously the ketubah only takes effect from the nisuin. Mishnah, hagioret shenitgaira. Bita ima, shenitgaira bita ima. A gioret, a female convert that converted together with her daughter. Okay, vizinta, and her daughter was mizana.
The daughter was mizana or she?
The daughter. Harezu bechenik, meaning over here we're talking about a case of. It's not technically going to be motzi shemra, but it's the case of motzi shemra. What does that mean? When a regular Israel, okay, we'll get to the Gioret, we'll get to the explanation of the Mishnah in a second. When a regular Israel, a girl is engaged, and we're not talking about engaged of nowadays, because engaged of nowadays is not the same as engaged of back then. Back then, it was when they were saying engaged, erusin, it was actual giving of the ring and saying hare at mikudeshet li. Right? Today we don't do that. It's tnaim, but it's not
stronger than the Rabbi, no?
Again, even with the tnaim, you wouldn't need a get.
No, but
back then, if you wanted to break up the nisuin, the erusin, you would need a get. Okay, so if after the erusin of back then, the girl in between the erusin and the nisuin was mizana, she wasn't clean. Okay, she betrayed him, you can say. Okay, the halacha is that she has to get sekila. Where does she get sekila? In front of her father's house. Okay. Obviously,
Oh,
obviously that goes without saying. It has to be with witnesses. It has to be an established thing in the. No, we're not talking about that now. Okay. Sekila. What? Skila is going for the girl. Not regular Israel. That's what the Torah says. Okay. We bring her to the entrance of her father's house. Uskalua. Why? Because they're showing that, listen, this is the education that this family is giving, that, while she's engaged, she can still do such a thing in her father's house. Okay? This is the case for Bat Israel Shezinta. Okay? When she was still when she was Meolesed. A regular case of Znut, what's the halacha? What do they get? Chenek. A regular case. No, married woman, everything is, regular. The regular halacha is chenek. Now, over here, the Gemara said, the Mishnah says that if it was a giyoret together with her daughter, both of them converted, meaning the daughter was already born. Because we're going to soon see that what happens if she wasn't born, whatever. The daughter was already born. In this case, she gets chere. Why? She doesn't get sekila like a regular bat Israel. Why not? En la lo petach bet ha'av velo mea sela. Because in this case, there's no bet. She converted. She doesn't. It's considered as if she doesn't have a father, right? When a person converts, their family relations don't apply anymore.
If her father died, she doesn't
make a difference.
Huh?
Doesn't make a difference. If she was born a Gioret, if she was born a Goya, even if it was to a Jewish father, if she was born to a non-Jewish mother, she's considered not Jewish. And after, when she converts, all her family relations get removed.
Like
so technically speaking,
Really?
Technically speaking, she would even be able to marry her brother. It doesn't make a difference who. She would technically.
But Chachamim
say no. Why? Because they say, listen, she's coming from Kedusha Kala. She's coming from a Goya, being a Goya, where as a Goya she was not able to marry her brother. All of a sudden she converts and now she can marry her brother. It doesn't think. But according to halakha, strict halakha, she would technically be allowed to. Why? Because when she converts, she has no more family relations, meaning that her brother is no longer her brother. She wouldn't need to. She wouldn't need to. If she wants to, it's something else. What? Exactly. Okay. So over here she gets chenek. Why? She doesn't have petach beta'av. We said that he has to take her, if in a normal case where it's the elusin, he has to take her in front of the father's house and stone her in front of the father's house. But since there's no father's house, that's one. And number two, even in the case of motzi shemra, what happens in the case of normal motzi shemra? That let's say this claim was false. They found this claim was false. What do? He has to pay penalty. He has to pay the penalty, right? Who does he pay the penalty to?
The father.
He has to pay the penalty to the father. In this case, he wouldn't have to pay the mea kesef. He wouldn't have to pay the knas, the fine of 100 coins. Okay, because again, there's no father. Haita, new case. Haita horata shelo bikdusha, veledata bikdusha. If she was conceived shelo bikdusha, when her mother was still a goya. However, when she was born, their mother already converted. Harezu biskila ve'en la petach bet ha'av. Wow. So in this case, since she was born Jewish, so she's going to get sekila. However, there's not going to be petach bet ha'av. Why? Because since her mother was conceived when she was a goya, so the father is not going to be considered a father.
She was born Jewish.
She was born Jewish.
She said she doesn't have the relationship with the father if she converted. But here
she
was born Jewish.
Yes. But again, since she was
conceived.
Exactly. Since she was conceived when her mother was a goya, so she doesn't have that relation towards her father.
It's still sekila.
So in this case, it would be sekila, yes. It would be sekila, but there's no petach beta'av.
But again, if she was Jewish, it would be chenek.
No.
100%. If she was we'll see this right now. We're going to see right now.
No.
Horata veledata bikdusha. If let's say her mother converted, however, after her mother converted, both the herayon, both the conceiving and the birth, well, after she converted, okay, it's obviously Jewish. So if the conceiving and the birth were done when the mother was Jewish, she's a Jewish girl for all intents and purposes, and she had yesh la'av ve'en la petach bet ha'av. Yesh la bet ha'av ve'en la'av, הרי זו בסקילה. Okay? לא נאמר פתח בית האב, אלא למצווה.
אבל אם אבא שלך גוי, אמא שלה הוא גוי.
אז יפה, זה בדיוק מה שאומר המשנה.
אז יש לה פתח באב או אין לה?
לא, אין לה.
אז מה השוני? שמקבלת סקילה.
זה בדיוק מה שהמשנה אומרת. לא נאמר פתח בית אב, אלא למצווה. זה המצווה. עכשיו, אין לה, okay, אם אין לה, okay, if she has a father, however, the father doesn't have a house, right? She's still going to get skila. She's not going to get skila in front of her father's house because her father doesn't have a house, but she's still going to get skila. Meaning the Mishnah at the end of the day says, Lo ne'emar petach bet av ela lemitzvah. The only reason why the Torah tells us that you have to do it petach bet av is not li'ikuva. It's not to impede or to make sure that it's not going to happen. Rather, petach bet av is just for an extra mitzvah that it should be done in front of the father's house. Okay? Gemara. Okay, Menahan Emili. Says the Gemara, from where do we know that if her conceiving was done shelo bikdusha, okay, when her mother was still a goya, and she was born a Yehudiya, that she gets sekila, Amar Reish Lakish, the Amalka umeta, and she will die. Okay, it says that they have to do the stoning, and she will die. It's the pasuk. והוציאו את הנערה אל פתח בית אביה וסקלוה, אנשי עירה באבנים, ומתה, כי עשתה נבלה בישראל לזנות בית אביה, וביעתה הרע מקרבך. Okay? So it says that you have to do סקילה, וסקלוה אנשי עירה באבנים, what's ומתה? What do you have to add on? When you're saying that your stoner, obviously she's gonna die. So what's the vameta? What's that?
Sometimes
What you do skila without killing her?
No.
If she know that you do the skila, no?
The whole thing of sikila is to do that.
She's gonna die.
But if you just say that uskalua, once you say to do, you don't say חרג and
No, you do differently. You have another method.
No,
our minhag is different.
דאמר קרב ומתה.
מה בא להוסיף?
לרבות הורתה שלא בקדושה ולידתה שבקדושה. The extra word, okay, is coming to teach us that even if her herayon, her conceiving, right, was shelo bikdusha, she would still get this punishment of sekila and not the regular punishment of chenek. According to most opinions, the punishment of sekila is the harshest. Okay, so the order we say in Yom Kippur, sekila, serefa, hereg v'chenek. So sekila is the worst, and chenek is the lightest.
Chenek is strangulation, yeah?
Strangulation. How does that work? The Mishnah says, exactly, the Mishnah says not by hanging.
Don't try
they bury the guy halfway till his waist in the ground, they put a napkin around his throat. Why do they put a napkin around his throat? So that when they end up pulling the thing, it's not only it's gonna hurt him less. And on top of that, all of these capital deaths, all of the punishments, they would give him to drink before, they would get him drunk before. And for this reason, when we say by Kiddush, Savrim Ma'anan, what do we say? L'chaim. Why? Because back then they would give him a cup of wine to get him drunk, so he wouldn't think. But we're saying no. This cup that we're doing by Kiddush, by all the smachot, whatever it is, ze l'chaim. Ze lo chas v'shalom. Shelo yachshavu that we shouldn't think that chas v'shalom is doing it for the mitad. Rather, this one is l'chaim. This one is for life. Okay. So over here.
גם המלכים היו לוקחים את הכוס. המלכים, לפני שטועמים, אם המשרתים לטעום. כדי שלא יהיה אצלם רע.
Yeah, but over here we're talking about...
No, for sure.
Okay, so he said over here, Ihachi milka nami nilki umea sami sela nami leshalem. Says the Gemara, if you're already saying that she gets the punishment of sekira, even though her conceiving was done shelo b'kedusha, so in this case, if she already gets the punishment of sekira, so let her also get the fine. Let the guy also have to pay the fine. Let him also get malkut if he actually does this motzi shemra.
But the fine go only because of the father not good education, so therefore she doesn't have a father. Why? What's it?
Yeah, but the second that you're saying that she's liable.
She's liable, yes, but the whole purpose of the knas is because her father did not educate
Correct.
her well.
No, that's not. No. That's not that's the opposite. That's the purpose of the sekira.
No, the knas.
The knas is something else. The knas is that this guy now embarrassed the father.
That's what I said. So because he embarrassed the father, now she doesn't have a father.
Okay, but still, if you're saying that she's going to get, again, based on what the Gemara is asking right now, why should it only be a liability and not also something positive? Yeah. Why should it only be that now she can get sekira, but she's not going to get the 100 gold coins? Says the Gemara, Ihachi milka nami nilki umea sela nami leshalem. Let him also get malkot or pay the 100 the 100 coins if he's found to have lied. Amalka, says the pasuk, vameta, that she shall die. Lemita nitrabta, for death she was included. Velo liknas, but not for the fine.
So from the meta we're learning two things, not only one. From the meta we're learning two things in that case.
No, we're only learning one.
No, the first one we're learning.
No, because we're only learning that this is applicable, not something else. When we're saying that vameta is including her for sekira, we say that it only includes sekira, not everything else. Okay? Ve'emaleh rabot, and let's say that this is coming to include vameta, the pasuk of vameta. Let's say it's coming to include horata veledata b'kedusha, that when she was both conceived and born a Yehudiya, says the Gemara, Israelit ma'aliyata. She's a full Jew for for everything. There's no questions asked over here. Ma'aliyata hi. Ve'emaleh rabot horata veledata shelo b'kedusha. So says the Gemara, okay, let's say vameta is coming to include that when she was born not Jewish, and then afterwards she converted. Says the Gemara, Im ken Israel, mai ahanile. What's if you're saying that even when she's born, because if she was born not Jewish, and you're going to say that she's going to get sekira, so when the pasuk says afterwards, ki aseta nevala beIsrael, it's not beIsrael. Why? Because since she was born a not Jew, and you're going to say she gets the same punishment, it's not the same as Israel. So therefore, there has to be a distinction. There has to be a difference between a non-Jew and a Jew in this case. Okay. So in this case, Israel is coming to teach us that it has to be that she's Jewish. She was at least born Jewish. Okay. בקדושה ישראלית מעלייתה היא ואימה לרבות הורתה ולידתה שלו בקדושה אם כן בישראל מה היה הנראה אמר רבי יוסי בר חנינא המוציא שם רע על היתומה, someone who does motzi shem ra on a yitoma, on an orphaned girl, patur. He doesn't have to pay the knas. Shneimar v'natenu la'avi hane'ara. They have to give to the father of the girl. Prat lezu she'en la'av. It's coming to exclude a girl that doesn't have a father. Mativ Rabbi Yossi bar Avin v'item Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida v'im ma'en yima'en aviha. Right? By the case of ones, the case of where she was raped. It says that if the father will refuse to give his daughter to him, what is that coming to include? Lirabot yitoma liknas. It's coming to include that the yitoma is in this case that by honest at least that he's going to have to pay a yitoma liknas. Divrei Rabbi Yossi Aglili. This is Rabbi Yossi Aglili. So we see that by the case of honest, even though it says aviha, even though it says that it should go to the father, we still see that he has to pay, even though she's a yitoma in this case. So the same thing should apply to our case also by Motzi Shemra. Why do we say that the yitoma doesn't get anything? Says the Gemara, Hu motivla, he asked the question, V'hu mifarek la, and he's the one that answered it. And what's the answer? Biva aleha ve'achar kach nityatma. What's the second case talking about by honest where he has to pay the knas? It's talking about where
the father was alive.
He when he raped her,
the
father was alive. And after that, then she was a yitoma. In this case, yes, he would have to pay.
What do you mean by after? What's the...
Before he was brought to the bidding.
It's not go to the father.
No, we learned that in the Mishnah of the first Perek. Sorry, the first Mishnah of the Perek. First Mishnah of the Perek, we saw that if Kol Od there wasn't a psak din, then it's going to go to the girl.
When you said you paid the father, doesn't matter what age was the girl?
Again, na'ara.
No.
Na'ara is until she's going to be 12 and a half. Once she's bogeret at 12 and a half, everything goes to it would go to her.
It will go to her?
It
will,
by honest for sure. Yeah. Whatever it's going to be. But again, that's the Mishnah, the first Mishnah of the Perek. It goes through the whole details of everything over there. Okay. Rava Amar Chayav Mimai Miditani Ami, that Ami says, Betulat Israel Velo Betulat Gerim.
Wow.
Okay.
You want to make a difference between the previous case that she was honest when her father was alive. Then before the Exadin, the father died, they paid the girl. And here said if you pay him, he doesn't get nothing. That's what she did.
No, he's saying like this. He's saying when it says that he has to pay, Rashi says, Veha betulat gerim yitomahi. Okay.
Exactly.
Rashi says
Wow.
that the same way that he has to do
Wow.
betulat Israel. So over here, a yitoma is going to be considered the same thing as gerim, meaning that she doesn't have a father. Okay, so says the Gemara, I amad bishlama ki hay gavna beIsrael. If you're going to say this, same thing by the Israel michayav, that he's going to be chayav hainu ditzterech kra limute gerim. For this reason, we need a pasuk to come exclude gerim. Ela I amad beIsrael b'kai gavna patur. But if you're going to tell me that in this case the Israel is going to be patur, hashta beIsrael patur begerim ibaya. That if he's going to be patur by bat Israel, so you're going to have to teach me something special by gerim? For sure not. So therefore, we have to see that there is this distinction. Amar Reish Lakish, hamotzi shemra al haktana patur, sheneemar v'natenu la'avi hana'ara. Na'ara male. When it says na'ara in this pasuk, it says na'ara with a hey at the end, which means it's written male. Male diber hakatuv. So the pasuk says it in a full thing. It writes it out, spells it out the full way. Matkif la Rab Acha bar Abba ta'ama diktiba hana'ara. The reason why, because it says hana'ara for. Halav hachi, if not for this, hava mina afilu ktana, I would think that even ktana, hakti ve'emet haya davar hazeh, לא נמצאו בתולים לנערה והוציאו את הנערה על פתח בית אביה וסקלוה וכתניו לאו בת עונשין היא. You can only do this for a נערה. Why? Because a קטנה is you can't punish her. What do you expect from her? She doesn't have enough.
It's like when they have a case under 16, they consider him another court, so they judge him differently.
Yeah. So over here, קטנה בכלל, she's not able to be brought to din. It's the same thing. Someone that's less than bar mitzvah, you can't judge them. You can't bring them to bedin. Maybe the father, but not the child. Okay.
But we still motzi shemra, even if she's not age, we still motzi shemra on the father, no? The is there.
No.
Why not?
Because again, she's a ktana. What do you want from the father?
We don't. No.
Again, the whole thing.
The father is moved.
No, because she's a ktana. Meaning that the father didn't finish his education. We know there's something called gil chinuch, right? Gil chinuch is until when? From 6, 7, whatever it is, until bar mitzvah. That whole period is called chinuch. You can't expect someone to be fully educated unless they're educated, unless you educate them. So we're not holding the father responsible for something that his daughter is going to be doing as thing. He's in the middle of educating her. What do you want? So he says, what does the pasuk have to come and tell me, avi hana'ara, and say, because it says na'ara full, then it's only the na'ara and not the ktana. Baru, obviously it's not the ktana. Why?
You cannot condemn the ktana anyway.
The ktana, you can't punish her regardless. You can't do anything about it. Okay? Ela, so why does it have, what's the whole purpose of writing na'ara full? Ela kan na'ara, ha kol makom shneimar na'ara, without a afilu ktana b'mashma. So he's saying that the reason why we wrote it over here, na'ara, and we said, we hear it as a hey, so it's only referring to a fully grown na'ara, to tell us that any other place that it doesn't say with a hey, then it can include even a ktana.
Wow.
Afilu ktana b'mashma.
יש דוגמה?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but there are instances. Okay. Tani Shila. Shila said, Shalosh midot banara. There are 3 stages for a na'ara. Ba'u la'edim bevet chamiha, shezinta bevet abiyah. If when she's already married in her father-in-law's house, after she's married, we have witnesses that come and tell us that when she was a na'ara, when she was still me'oreset, zinta, she was with someone else. Sokrin ota al petach bet aviyah. In this case, this is the exact case where we do her sekila in front of her father's house. Kilomar, in other words, a statement to make a statement. Re'u gidulim shegidaltam. Look at the education that the father gave. Right? I know for older Moroccans, right? One of the worst curses that you can give them is insulting their parents. Right? One of the worst things, or even in French, we have the saying. It says we say "tu es mal élevé," right? Well, what's "tu es mal élevé"?
Not educated.
You're not educated, and it's an insult. It's a curse. Who is it referring to? It's usually referring to the parents. The funny part is even parents tell it to their children sometimes.
You know the story that somebody came to Rav Kanievsky. You have a 16 years old boy, and the boy had difficulties, and he said, "Rabbi, please pray for my son." And he have difficulties, and he said, "You should come here 16 years ago." You educate him like that.
Yeah. Again. So at the end of the day, the education or the education of a person depends on his parents. So we're saying, look at the education that this house gives. Look at this girl. Me'oreset, na'ara me'oreset. She's already engaged. She's already and she goes ahead and she does something like this. that means that the education in this house is a bad thing, and we're making the statement by stoning her in front of her father's house.
The education is starting before the conception.
Yeah, that's thing, but especially in this type of case, right? Unfortunately today, with all the social media and everything else like this, parents are barely educating. No, it's true. Parents are barely educating. Why? Because now it's the whole world that educates this child. But the education that we can give is to make sure that they don't have access to this social media. That's the education that we're held responsible for. Because if we're allowing them and we're giving them the opportunities to enter all this thing, who's the one responsible for that?
Still responsible, and you can still give them education and leave them.
It's very
in the
difficult.
open world.
It's very difficult.
It is difficult. I know, believe me, I know.
When
Doesn't mean that
no, when a child is more sheltered, when a child is growing up in a sheltered environment, okay, the parents have a lot more influence and a lot more possibilities to properly educate. When the child is exposed to all these external things, so it starts, okay, and maybe in the house, the kid is going to behave a certain way, but the way he's going to be coming home with expectations and demands and all sorts of ideas are going to be coming from where? All day long they're stuck to their phone watching these videos, yeah.
Also, if you don't show them at all the outside world, once they're open to the outside world, well, anyway, they can go to the extreme.
The outside world they're going to be exposed to. They're going to be exposed to all the time.
That's why they need to know what's going on.
They're going to be exposed to all the time, and the obligation that you have is for you to be the one to expose them to it, not by allowing them to access whatever they want on their own. Right? How many here? I remember a couple of weeks ago. I think it was in the news. They're trying to sue TikTok. Why? There was a challenge that was going around where you have to choke yourself. You have to you take a belt and you have to choke yourself and see how long you can last after you pass out. And 2 people died from it. Is this something that any normal parent would allow their children to do? Would something like this even come up in a normal house without stupidity? Or another thing where there was this 5-year-old kid, I don't know what it was. He asked Alexa, what should I do? Or I don't know, give me something to do. So there was another trend, of course, TikTok, a wonderful, wonderful source of education. They told a 5-year-old kid, take a penny and put it in between the plug, the plug and the wall socket. See what happens. Again, another challenge that's going on. This is a type of exposure that you want a child to have exposure to the outside world. Of course not. So by putting a kid in a certain environment where the norm is to have TikTok, where the norm is to have all these social medias.
Instagram.
That too.
The goal is not be mikatse de katse.
It's not a question of katse el katse.
For me, it is. If you go one extreme or the other,
it's not a question of katse el katse. Again, at the end of the day, if you're putting your kid in an environment,
well, they are already
an environment where not everyone, and it's not the norm to have. Again, you're putting your kid in public school and you're telling him, "I don't want you to have TikTok." You're setting yourself up for a useless fight. What do you expect?
No,
don't put your kid in public school.
Education, you teach them what's right.
And you think that you're going to be able to supervise everything that they're watching and tell them this is right, this is wrong? Yeah? And how come these people are dying?
Because they're not doing it.
They're not doing it. Do you think the parents see these stupid challenges? You're able to control what your kid sees on Instagram, on TikTok, on anything like that? You're not able to.
It's the environment that you put them, that they spend the time. It's like, you have 5 Jewish schools, 1 more religious, 1 less religious. Now, you're going to have from the religious school exception that kids will not go in the right derech, but you want to minimize the percentage of what they will go. So if somebody go and make an operation, you can tell you 60% are going to be good, that one's going to 80%. Which operation are you going to take? You want to have 80%. Same thing here. If you send them to a school like that, they're all good. You're going to see good people come from this school also. But you expose them less and give them less risk. That's what you're doing. That's it. That's what the Torah, the whole time I want to prevent. That's what
הילדים לא מושפעים רק ממך. also from
יאללה, גמרא. Okay, so at the end of the day, it's the education. It's the education of the father, and this is why we say that. It has to be done in front of the father's house. Second case. If while she was still in her father's house, no, we're going to do a little bit more, and I know it's Friday and Shabbat. Yeah, we're going a little bit further, so we can make it up. Okay. Second case is באו לה עדים בבית אביה שזינתה בבית אביה, סוקלין אותה על פתח שער העיר. Meaning, if she was still in her father's house when something like this happened, and it wasn't found out only when she got to the Bet Chamia, where do we do the skira? In Sha'ar Ha'ir, in the
entrance.
Yeah, meaning that this happened before she got married, that the edim came and thing. Okay. And this is based on the pasuk that tells us that ki na'ara betula morasa, right? And what does it say? Ve'otzetem et shneim petach sha'ar ha'ir, and you should take that to the thing, and then you stone them over there. Third case is sarcha ulbasof bagra, if she did what she did, and then afterwards she became a bogeret. Right? She was became old enough. Tidon bechenek. She gets chenek in this case. Okay. Says the Gemara, lememra. Why? Why does she get chenek? Because she's no longer a ne'ara. Now she became a bogeret. Okay. The punishment of sekira was reserved only for ne'ara.
What's the why?
Says the Gemara, lememra. What does this mean? That when her body changes, that means the death penalty also changes.
Exactly.
Says the Gemara, the Raminhi asks the Gemara contradiction. Na'ara hamo'arasa shezinta umishi bagra hotzia alea shem ra eno loke ve'eno noten me'asela. And then he doesn't get the malkut and he doesn't have to pay. He v'zomemeha Magdimim lebet askila. However, she and the witnesses that contradict this whole thing, the zomemim, Magdimim, they have to both go to bet askila. Says the Gemara, wait a second. He v'zomemeh asar kadaitach. You mean to say that both her and the zomemim, it's either or? What do you mean? Says the Gemara, Ela o he o zomemeh magdimim lebet askila. Okay. That either or. So we still see that even though she became a bogeret, she still gets the sekila. Says the Gemara, Amarava motzi shemra ka'ama. We're talking about motzi shemra. Shani motzi shemra. Motzi shemra is different. Why? The chidushu, that it's a special deen that the Torah gave us. Why? Deha nichnesa lechupa v'no niv'ala be'alma v'zinta bechenek. Normally, when if she gets married and she cheats, what happens?
Chenek.
She gets chenek. V'ilu motzi shemra b'skila. However, motzi shemra is skila. So we see that there's a special difference by motzi shemra as opposed to other cases. Okay. I'll stop over here. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.
suffisant.